Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brothers Take podcast. My name is Kris. I am joined once again by my brothers Adam
Hello.
and Eric.
Hello.
We are back in the room this week to talk more gaming, and it is spooky season. HAWKTOBER, we're getting closer. Did I just say HAWKTOBER? Like, it's HAWK2 a month. It's October. We're getting closer to Halloween, spooky time, spooky season. And with that in mind, we're going to be talking about horror games, and in particular, our personal top 5 horror games of all time that we've played to date so far. This is obviously a personal preference list rather than these are definitively the best horror games. We have not played every horror game.
I guarantee the scariest horror game is not in our list.
No, definitely not. And also, many people would be like, man, you don't have that game, you don't have that game. There's a big chance we didn't play it. So do share your own lists if you're listening. If you're watching YouTube, drop that in the comments to share your lists, because if it's something we haven't played, then we will take it as a recommendation. If you're saying it's like one of the best horror games ever, then maybe we will want to play it. So do share your own picks, either down in the comments on YouTube or on audio platforms. You get to get in touch, social media, Facebook, Instagram, X at The Brothers Take. If you enjoy this episode on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, ring the notification bell for all future episodes, and make sure you guys are following our podcast. But without wasting any time, without any further ado, let's get spooky. So, very recently, I just want to call this out before we start getting into our list and stuff, right? But very recently, the Silent Hill 2 remake came out. I'm giving an example basically of, I would say a lot of people who are like horror game aficionados, or people who have like played lots and lots and lots of horror games, would have like the original Silent Hill 2 probably in their list. We know that that's a beloved horror game that just recently got a remake. But we have not played Silent Hill 2. So you won't find that in our list. However, is anyone, because we all were not excited for the remake at all from any of the footage, is anyone surprised by the very positive reviews that came out about it?
Probably as surprised as the people who are reviewing it, because they're also being surprised by how good it is. So,
yeah, very much so. Adam, have you seen any of the positive praise for Silent Hill 2 remake?
No, I haven't really been keeping an eye on it. It's not. I don't think I'd be picking it up.
No, you might not. But I guess I think we all thought it was going to be a shit show, and it's getting 9s out of 10s like across the board.
I mean, it's not that's not the first time.
No, not at all. But it's just surprising, I guess, because nobody was expecting it, even watching the footage. It wasn't like they heard of it and went, that doesn't sound right. And then it's like, oh, it's going to be Bloober Team. I don't think that's the right team. And it's Konami, and none of this sounds right. And it was actually every single trailer, everyone was like, that looks terrible. Something's not right, you know? But apparently people are loving it. If you have been playing Silent Hill 2, let us know, guys. Let us know if it's really, really good. Should we be checking it out? Especially when you see our lists. If you're kind of thinking, oh, you guys would definitely like Silent Hill 2 based on what you have actually come out with. Do let us know. I have a question. Because my list, I have 2 lists at the moment. There's only one variation, one difference. Because it kind of depends on, is The Last of Us a horror game?
I mean, like, I suppose so. There's definitely horror elements to it. Is it designed specifically with horror in mind? Like, is that the goal of it? Probably not. But there's certainly horror elements. Now, that could get a bit dicey, and you could say, you know, there's so many games that might have, like, elements of horror. Like, Firewatch has a slightly horror element to it, but you absolutely wouldn't call that a horror game.
Uncharted, like, towards the end of the first one.
Yeah. But I would... Yeah, it's certainly horror adjacent.
What I'm wondering is, like, if you're like, is it in the horror genre though, or is it just got horror elements? because if it is in the horror genre,
Generally, it's
then
in action adventure, isn't it? More so than in the horror space.
okay. So what are we saying? Is it not a horror game? I need to know this.
I would classify it not as horror, personally.
What do you think, Eric? Is The Last of Us a horror game?
I kind of would have classed it as like a tame survival horror game.
Okay.
Yeah. I suppose so.
But it's totally up to you, Chris. Like if you if you were crapping your pants every situation, then that's a pretty survival horror situation for you. Like,
do you? Well, we'll see. We'll see. I know, Eric, you recently finished The Last of Us Part 1 remake.
Yeah, the remake of it, which is a good way to play that game.
Yeah,
the same story, same
we were like really like, why are they doing this?
Well, actually, there is documentary on it where they do say that the reason they did it was to bring it up to the same standard as The Last of Us Part 2.
Right.
Because after they did it, they were like,
but that's worse. I know what you
mean. So it is the better way to play the game because it's the same story, same dialogue, same pacing, but runs faster, looks better, and then
like
there's
Delta.
A few little...
Yeah, I wonder, like, if you enjoyed it this much, has this sort of...
I didn't really think about it in that.
But now if you think about it, might it sell you on the actually I might love playing Delta this way?
I want to see
the same game I love but better.
I want to see more of Delta. I want to see the gameplay, or more importantly, I want a demo. Demos for everything. Nothing but demos. In fact, don't even release the games. Just give us demos. Great.
Demos are we swear by them, really, don't we? Demos are amazing. Demos sell games. They do. Yeah. Or if you're worried about your game as a developer, then don't do a demo. Then you just sneak it on people. You know what I mean? Because sometimes, and some really story-based games are hard to demo, without spoiling it. You know what I mean? Like I just think about like The Last of Us Part 2. If you had a demo for that, where would that demo even be?
Well, that's why they tend to like
giving anything away.
Like demos, specifically like from like the early, let's say PS3 era.
Yeah.
Were like very tailored experiences, and this is why demos stopped, because they weren't able to just take a chunk of the game. They had to actually go and make the demo, and that would take time away from making the game. And considering how long it takes to make a game, the last thing you want to do is pull people away from the main team to just work on a fucking demo.
Yeah, but that's why like a demo that is just a section of the actual game cut out from it.
Well, that's why they had to take it.
Can work, you know.
But just by what you're saying, it doesn't, you see. That's why they always had like a separate team that'll do like a chunk that'll just be tailored demo, because you can't just take a section of the game because it'll ruin the game.
Right.
The only thing that does work is something like you can do like a Fortnite demo. Like that's easy, right? You can do that. A Helldivers demo probably.
Or you take the approach that like Final Fantasy 16 did, where the demo is the first opening hours. You could decide to pay to continue play. Like it has. We intrigued you enough?
The game metaphor does that as well. It's the first couple of hours of the game. You can then carry it over.
And I tell you one thing, that fucking works too.
That works too. It does. It does.
I fucking bought that game because of that demo.
See, they know what they're at, man.
And then after the demo, I went,
they can
fuck
stop after that.
Shit.
they can relax after that.
They can, yeah.
Well, Adam, we'll come to you first, actually.
Okay.
And it's again, we're not like ranking them. It's in no particular order, but just if you had to pick 5 of the however many games you've ever played within the horror genre that you would class as your 5 favorites personally.
I tell you one thing, I've not played many horror games. And in fact,
are all the ones you've played the top 5? How many Resident Evils made it into this list?
2. There's a whole 2.
I was nearly like, Eric, how many Resident Evils made it into your top 5? But I will see when we get there. Yeah, so Adam,
some of these games I didn't even
in any order you want.
I didn't actually finish, but definitely ones I've played. I have to put the original Resident Evil 2 in here on PS1.
Wow.
Purely just because that was the game that established at 8 years old that the horror games weren't for me. And I didn't play a horror game until Resi 4 then. I didn't touch them. So that was the game that was like, it scared the absolute living shit out of me. and I was like, okay, I can't play anything that's that immersive and scary. So that's why I'll put Resident Evil 2 in there.
It helped you draw the line in
I
terms
was
of...
like, no, thank you. I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
You got to check. The candy at Halloween. I heard some people are sneaking Resident Evil 2s into the Snickers bars.
They are. Yeah. I also played Resident Evil 2 at a very young age, but only a very small section of it. But I think I had it in my head that I was afraid of it before playing it, as opposed to, so I didn't like have that thing of discovering from playing it that I was like, oh, this is scary. I had like the guys I was with were like, we should play this game, Resident Evil 2. I was like, no, guys, that's a scary game. Like I already had it in my head that Resident Evil is scary, and then they played it anyway, and I was like, oh, I don't know, guys, I don't know, this is scary. So yeah, it didn't introduce me to horror games really. It was that thing of like, I already knew it was a horror game, and I don't want to play it. Silent Hill was always the same. At that young age, I was any Silent Hill game, I was like, nope. Oh no, that's the scariest shit. I don't want to touch it.
But I knew that it was gonna be scary. I just didn't realize.
You were up for it at first.
Yeah, it was like, well, there's that intrigue, right? And I think that's the thing with horror. There is that a level of like, can I do it? But God, no, that was fucking scary. So that has to go into my list. There are scarier games, 100%. Like playing Resident Evil 2 now is laughable, but at the time, that shit was so scary.
Yeah, terrifying. What else did you have? Keep going.
Oh, right.
Give us more. Yeah, I'd say give us all 5. Well, you take your time with each one, but
Resident Evil 7.
Man, that is a scary game.
I actually think that
Pretty
is.
scary game.
I think as it stands right now, I think that is the scariest Resident Evil. It gets to a point where it's no longer, like it's not, and it's like it becomes a usual kind of action-packed Resident Evil game. But it took me a while to get through like the first section of that, like that with Jack like following around the house. That was that took a bit, and it was more people saying, no, you gotta push through, you gotta keep going, like this is worth playing. That I was just like, okay, I'll fucking do it. But the amount of times I noped out of that game, and for me, like that's a good horror, right?
Yeah, and well, I'm curious as well, like, because we're all probably gonna have a slightly different metric for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, in terms of top 5 horror games, for you, is it like I'm gonna pick the 5 scariest games that I've ever played?
Yeah.
Is that your metric of like top 5, as opposed to within the horror genre, my top 5 favorites to play? Do you get me?
Yeah. Okay. Like I mean, these are both right. So these are ones that scared the living shit out of me.
But they're all amazing games.
But they're really good to play. Like they are really, really good games to play. I didn't complete all of these, but I have played a good chunk of them for me to be able to say this is a very good horror game.
Yes, I don't know, and I don't know. I would agree with you. It wasn't a. I'm just trying to. When you were saying about how fucking like scary it was, I was trying to see, okay, is that how you're measuring it, sort of, so to speak? Was it like, is it based on which ones scared you the most versus which ones you enjoyed the most? That happened to be horror games, you know.
I mean, there's ones that scare me so much that I haven't even actually touched them yet. Or probably never will, actually.
I never will.
Yeah. Like Amnesia and Soma. Like, no thank you.
Right.
Not going to go down there. I understand that I don't have what it takes to play those incredibly scary games based on my list.
There's no Outlast on your list, huh?
Outlast is on my list.
Oh, it is on your list? Oh, shit. Oh, I didn't know you played Outlast.
So Outlast is the metric, I would say, for me not touching other games. You know,
right?
That shit is like that's the scariest game I've played.
It's a very scary game.
Yeah,
I was very I was very uncomfortable playing Outlast.
Yeah, so I the whole being chased without you being able to do anything about it is terrifying. There's a few that fit that kind of category. Like I was nearly gonna put Slender in here, but didn't. But but those type of games, and you can turn around and there it is, that kind of situation.
Yeah.
So yes, Outlast did make my list. It's not that's one I haven't completed, but I've played enough of it to go, that's fucking scary shit.
It is scary shit. Man, the ending of that game is wild.
Yeah.
It's wild. That game goes in a direction that I was not expecting at all. And it's like super interesting actually. And it's like, oh man, I wonder like they're so gonna franchise this and they should not, because it could just be this gem that people are like, oh, I'd love a sequel to it, and you just never give it to them. But I know there's more Outlast games and stuff, and they're all also fucking terrifying.
Yeah,
but I think it gets
there's
a bit
two, right? There's the DLC, I think, for the first Outlast, and then there's Outlast 2.
Is that the one with the picture? The artwork is like the person holding the severed finger up against.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
that.
so the
It's-
DLC is Whistleblower, and then there's Outlast 2, and then I think there's Outlast VR.
Oh,
Yeah,
damn.
There's
weird.
also the Outlast Trials or something like that. Was that another one?
Is that not the VR one?
Maybe that is the VR one. Maybe that is the VR one. I can't imagine playing Outlast in VR.
I can't imagine playing Outlast.
Have you not played Outlast?
I played a bit at a friend's house, and maybe we just kind of played it in a very silly way that kind of turned me off. But actually, what Adam was saying though was the not being able to defend yourself annoyed me more than scared me, because I was like, just realistically, you'd pick up a piece of broken glass or a pipe or a brick. Yeah, you pick up something. So the
Sure.
fact that you couldn't grab anything just kind of annoyed me more so than.
Didn't scare you? I think what scared me the most was the whole.
Well, it was probably me trying to like rationalize my fears. Like, no, this is stupid. I can't pick up anything.
All right, yeah. It's not that it's scary. It's just bad design.
It
Yeah,
certainly is the closest thing, I think, to the kind of Blair Witch kind of situation, like made as game. It's very effective, but
Very.
fucking hell.
I
don't
was
think the
always scared
length of it is fine though.
The length
you
of
know,
it is fine.
for
It
for
doesn't
the-
actually, because you can clear it in one night.
Yeah.
If you just keep at it.
Yeah.
It's but because of how intense it is, like you are maybe, unless you're like a horror connoisseur, you maybe would play it in shorter bursts anyway. You pace yourself because it is so scary. So even though you could clear it in one night, that's not to say that it's like, oh man, that game's like ridiculously short. It's like some horror games can be too long though, where it's like it actually kills the horror a little bit and just gets to a point of tedium, I would say. So yeah, you have to hit like a sweet spot, I think, with a horror game, before you like lose the audience, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the whole night vision camera thing and the fact that you can run out of batteries. That scared the fuck out of me, because I was like, I can't see a thing. I need to use it, but I'm terrified to use it. I don't want to run out of batteries, so I'm not using it. I might as well not have it now. This is pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
really
don't play.
scary.
It's fine.
Yeah, turning it off was the key. I found.
Yeah. Next on my list then is one that overstays its welcome. Alien Isolation.
Super fucking scary.
Yeah, that it's kind of like the Outlast one, I suppose, to some degree. Can't defend yourself. You have to it's kind of like a hide and seek game. Wonderfully captures the film. But it is too long. It gets to a point where it's kind of the same thing happening over and over and over again. Shit does start to hit the fan towards the end. But I think it'd be much more effective if they brought that closer. If they cut that game in half, I think it'd be a much more solid experience. And I hope with the sequel that they're planning that they learn from that. I don't know if they would. I think the people who love the game, like really love the game, want more. So I don't know if they'll necessarily cut, but
Yeah,
it's gonna be
I
twice
hope
as
they.
long.
I hope they do.
Because I'll say, so we recently had like the 10-year anniversary of Alien Isolation, which is, I think easily the best Alien game ever made, in terms of like the Alien franchise, not games that have aliens in them. And yeah, they did say that they're working on a sequel, so we'll eventually have a sequel to Alien Isolation. And just while we're on it at the moment, like, Adam, what would you want from that sequel?
Uh, I don't really know what else they could do necessarily without breaking it a bit. Definitely shorting it, make it shorter, and have more variety, I guess, in the gags. Not necessarily to script the AI so much, but there are moments where you kind of feel like, oh, I'm really really fucked right now, but it's kind of a cinematic moment that's supposed to happen.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
those things are few and far between. And
They could do more of those.
I think they could do with a few more of them, but not so much that it would take away from the randomness of the AI. I suppose they could just improve. That's a game that I think it does look beautiful, but it's one of those experiences that could be improved upon with the atmosphere and the lighting and the visceral texture of like the ship you're on and the actual xenomorph itself. Maybe even kind of incorporating the silhouette of the xenomorph more into the environment, so you can't tell whether is that a creature or is that, so you have to use your equipment to find out. So there's a few gags I think from Romulus that they could learn from, to enhance the terror.
Yeah.
But and I think maybe make a little bit more of a compelling story. So it kind of has, for your objective reasons, it's not very compelling why I need to go from here to there and so on. It's kind of similar to some other horror games, I guess, where it's like I kind of have to go down and turn on the generator in the basement kind of situation.
Yeah.
I would prefer if they were a little bit more like I absolutely have to do this, otherwise I'll die. I think it needs to make that much stronger and much clearer, that motivation.
Bit like Dead Space, when it's like, oh, we need to turn the oxygen back on, or like turn the engines back on, otherwise the ship is going to crash.
Yeah,
You're going around and
yeah.
fixing the ship, otherwise you're dead.
Well,
dealing with like disasters and stuff.
That's another game, which is the final one on my list.
Well, just before you get there, and I have a sneaking suspicion we might all have it anyway, but just before you get there, on the whole Alien Isolation sequel thing, I would love to see them use stuff that has been established in the Alien lore. I think they should be very creative with and Alien fans are not gonna like this, but I think in gameplay it would be sick, and they could have a lot of fun if they played with the black goo.
So some abominations and things like that.
Yeah, they could make some fucked up shit, new monsters, original monsters, but within that universe. But you still want xenomorphs and stuff. Maybe again it's like it's something that you want to keep to the very end, and it's a surprise thing, or for every necromorph, and I'm saying that on purpose. I'm not mixing them up, but like in a game like Dead Space, your necromorphs are your standard enemies, but every so often you come across a regenerator, and that's a special moment and a special thing. Maybe the Alien Isolation sequel, yes, the xenomorph is the standard enemy, but maybe there could be a special new type of thing that they create because of the stuff that has been introduced in the wider lore of Alien. I just think they could have some creative fun with that in a horror game.
Absolutely. It could just get, I suppose, you are... I think the fan base is a difficult one to keep happy.
To please everyone. Yeah.
Which is one of the that's one of the miracles of Romulus, is that it hasn't been absolutely torn to shreds critically, because it took some risks.
Sure.
And it did them beautifully. I think without trying to introduce something like the Queen and so on, I would certainly prefer that route with the abominations and things like that. If you're going to introduce some sort of combat,
but they're more likely to introduce a queen.
They're more likely to introduce a queen and to have some soldiers and things like that, which is less fun, I think, because we've seen it. It's done. we
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
had a game where you're going up
I would like
against
them to do something
hundreds
new
of
with
fight
it.
fields.
Yeah, yeah. But
Oh,
that
that'd
does.
be fucking weird.
You were hinting at your fifth game on your list.
Yeah, so Dead Space, the first one, um, I think that game does suffer from what I was just saying there about Alien Isolation, which is like really silly objectives having to go from A to B. But what a terrifying experience! I think the gaming industry owes a lot to that first Dead Space. When it comes to horror, I think even Resident Evil probably learned from it.
Yeah,
As well as the
as
likes
well
of
as
The
it
Last
learning
of
from
Us
Resident
and
Evil,
so on.
and yeah,
Yeah, it basically did the whole let's take what worked and let's reinvent it or push it forward. But that made that added a lot, I think, to the horror genre. So that's 100% going in there as one of the best horror games I've ever played.
yeah.
I had the remake version on my list. I don't know if that counts. Like, I
I
don't know
think
if we're
that
counting it
counts.
as two different things.
No, well, I mean, look, it's pretty much the same. Bar just they've made obviously a few additions to the remake, and obviously it looks better.
I think
But
it is.
ultimately they play the same and stuff, and it is ultimately the same experience. I also had Dead Space remake on my list, so like we all had Dead Space basically. And I suppose on that note, Eric, how come Dead Space made your list?
Well, thanks for asking me, Chris.
Yeah, no problem, Eric.
The
Anytime.
reason it made it is down to the lighting, down to sound design, and like the original Resident Evil 4, it was like I think the second horror game I played and cleared. It's like I still have the gun in hand and yet can still feel fear to the point that then when I get to that safe zone with the save icon and the store, you get that sigh of relief, almost like the bonfires or something in Dark Souls. You finally get to it and you have that moment of relief. That and then just it's compelling story. I think it's like pretty much it was an Alien game before we had Alien games. Like the only Alien games like we ever had were things like Colonial Marines or AVP or something like that, where it's like you shoot 100 aliens and there's nothing to it. But this is now again, it's that element of Alien. You're trapped on the ship, you don't know what's going on. The crew is dead. Some people are losing their minds, and then you have all these monsters that you're trying to deal with. And the designs are awesome in it. So
There,
yeah,
there are a few places in the video game worlds that by name alone can inspire dread in the player, right? If you hear we're going to Silent Hill, you're like, ah, oh, fuck. And if you hear we're boarding the Ishimura, it's ah, oh, fuck. The Ishimura is a legendary horror location, and it is terrifying. And I think, like why it made my list as well was like, both the original and like the remake. Like just they're pretty synonymous. Like it's just the remake is obviously, got a few improvements. Like, but it's a really faithful remake. But I remember like I was playing the original again in the lead up to the remake, and like it holds up, man. That it is a fucking scary game still. The sounds are scary, the just the general atmosphere, the blood in those halls, the steam, this like sometimes you're like, is there something in the vents or is that just the clinking of the ship? So that automatically makes you scared at all times. Something can pop out of a vent behind you, so you're just not sure. And then just from a game perspective, like Dead Space has the best UI ever.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think
It's fucking amazing.
I think we had an episode on UI, and I think we actually all put Dead Space
Man,
at the top.
we did not have an episode on UI, but we did have a moment in an episode on UI. Can you imagine us talking for a full fucking hour on UI only?
I could see Adam doing that.
I could see Adam doing it. Let's see you do it. But like, the fucking life bar is on the suit, and it's like it makes sense. They contextualize it. The
Yeah.
fucking waypoint. They did a fucking interactive waypoint well before Ghost of Tsushima.
They
Oh
did.
man, like it's
It's very.
so good.
It was a very innovative game.
So innovative. Like
And even
I-
the like a lot of games had crosshairs as just this random white circle or cross thing, but then
Right,
they
yeah.
implemented the crosshair into the gun's laser. Everything was just implemented into the world as well.
Yeah.
That it worked.
And then even though like the stuff in it is like derivative, it's like I know all the influences. I know where it's all coming from. I know this is like Alien meets Event Horizon meets Resident Evil. Like I know all the different influences. But it combines it in such a way that it's like I could see them, but I don't feel like this is just a rip-off. It's also something new. It is also doing something new with it all. And it kind of like, you play like a game like Uncharted and you're like, yeah, I can see the like where they're pulling from, and they're not trying to like sneak it in. Like they're not trying to trick you or something. It's like no, we are paying homage to all the things we love.
Yeah, I suppose the difference being I haven't got an original idea, so I'm just taking your thing to do my own. Versus I don't have the rights to that thing, but I'm going to give you an experience that makes you feel like you're living that.
Sure, yeah. Or it's like just straight up, I am inspired by all these things, and I want to put those things together.
Makes you
As a
feel like
new
the Event
experience.
Horizon.
It makes you feel. So yeah, Dead Space. What a fucking game. And I remember when the remake was announced, it wasn't even about like necessarily do you want a remake of Dead Space, because Dead Space, as we've said, plays so well still. It holds up incredibly well. It's, you can still go play on Game Pass and stuff. It's fucking incredible. But it was just this franchise deserves a comeback. And it doesn't matter in what way, shape, or form that is. It is a shame to leave Dead Space after Dead Space 3. Just because Dead Space 3, kind of shot the bed a little bit. It's like, no. You gotta bring Dead Space back. The potential that the initial two games had is so strong. So Eric, Dead Space was one of your 5.
Yeah. And considering we actually can count, that means me and Adam do again share something on the list, because I was going to say Resident Evil 2 remake.
You're
So-
just going for all the remakes of the ones he had. He has the OGs. And you
Yeah,
have...
so like Alien Isolation remake. No. But yeah, Resident Evil 2 remake, because I never played the original. And I remember for quite a while, I was very much going, I'd love to play a game with zombies where the zombies are like zombies. Because nearly every game we had was like, I love the necromorphs. But also it's like, but they're not your traditional zombies. They're a cool like alien variation of zombie. But then we had The Last of Us. It's like, yeah, they're still not zombies.
That's so funny because like the rest of the world is like, I'm sick of zombies, and those were like responses.
Yeah. At
Well, I
that
suppose
point, they were.
for me though, because my first entry into horror was Resident Evil 4,
Yeah.
the original.
Yeah,
on
so
PS2.
which was like
The first one to get away
from zombies.
Away from
yeah.
zombies.
the
So
traditional zombie, to come up with a
I
new
didn't
zombie.
have
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
had the traditional zombie. So
You're in the
single-
middle of that
Right.
like transition, like we're trying to get out of the zombie trope.
Yeah. So
And
I
you were like,
wanted.
That's
I
funny.
want the zombie trope. I never got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got it. Like even when you play Undead Nightmare, it's like still not the zombie trope though. Like So when playing Resident Evil 2, I got those traditional slow bullet sponging zombies that you don't want them near you. The claustrophobicness of the RPD, amazing graphics, retelling that story, and then hiding in a safe room trying to figure out Mr. X's pattern. Like that
I hate that
alone
guy.
was that was
Yeah,
that was
he's a scary fucker.
he's quite scary. He's definitely scarier than Nemesis, I think.
In the way that they did it this time around, yes, they could have. Nemesis could have been scarier. I was more afraid of. I remember playing Ori 2 Remake, which is an incredible game, and being like, "Wow, man, when they make Ori 3, there's no fucking way I'm playing that. Like Nemesis is going to be way worse than this." And I think they just. I know it was a different team. I think they just sort of. They went more for Nemesis is this sort of badass iconic boss. So we need to make him badass. Rather,
Mm.
like, it became more about boss fighting Nemesis rather than Nemesis hunting you, you know?
Yeah. So you're quite on edge at the start, really, of Resident Evil 3 because he does full on run at you,
Mm.
but you can dodge. You can roll out of the way and slow down time and start shooting them and stuff. And yeah, so it doesn't. And then you kind of get past that very quickly. But with Mr. X, he follows you around the entirety of the police station, like, and then he
Yeah.
will show up again and he'll show up again. So he just stomps. He's just stomping after you, and the music then comes on, and you're just like, fucking run.
He's basically the Terminator, isn't he?
He's Terminator. So it's like the closest we now have to like the original Terminator movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be why, because it's like I finally got my zombies that everyone didn't stop wanting, and I was like, no, but I want them, so I finally got them. I got to play as in Raccoon City. I don't think other than the Umbrella Chronicles, I've never played in Raccoon City.
Yeah.
So I got
Another
that and
iconic video game location.
another iconic video game, and then yeah, I got Mr. X, and that was a really great game. Great with keep ship, because fuck me, I sweated all the weight off me.
It is a great game. It didn't make my top 5, but it is like if we could make a top 20 list if we really wanted, you know what I mean?
Next one, I will say Resident Evil 4 Remake.
Hey.
Oh, okay.
What are you saying like that?
Wait, what's your beef, bro?
Yeah, what's
Oh,
your beef,
just yeah.
what's wrong with you, man?
Done.
No, say what you say.
Go on, man. Yeah,
Say what
what's
your
wrong?
face is trying to say.
I'm just surprised.
He's like, I would have put the original. He's like,
No, I really wouldn't. Purely because I think it's because that game. I think it's more like almost like Last of Us in a way. It's like there's moments that are like ooh, but I think it's kind of like a fun adventure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but it's a horror game.
Yeah,
bro.
yeah. I was just surprised because Eric does actually play quite a bit of horror.
Yeah,
Do you know
and
what I mean?
Resident Evil 4 is one of the best.
Sure. That's why
Resident Evil 4 Remake was also on my list.
Look, it just took
Okay.
me by surprise. That's all I'm saying.
No. What's
it's
your beef with it, man?
interesting.
Why do you
It's
hate?
interesting.
Why do you hate Capcom?
You hate all things. That's what I heard.
No, joking.
Eric, why did Ori 4 Remake make your list?
Because first of all, the Resident Evil 4 original was the first horror game I ever played. So that got me into it. So they go
And
back
that
there.
is a scary game.
It is a scary game, and I think this then ramps up the horror more the first time you're playing the game.
Mhm.
But then I like the added stuff like the stealth. And the graphics are better, and I think your man doing the voice for Leon, it was like really like when you're playing Resident 2, you're like, really, like they're gonna continue this guy, and then he does it. You're like, this, yeah, he did a fucking good job actually. He really captures a more grown up Leon, and I think they somewhat solidify the story a little bit more as well. There's some stuff missing from the original, which I would have liked that they kept, like some of Leon's sassiness, but it was still a bit there. But I just think graphically, the enemies are pretty scary. At times, the regenerators are
Terrifying.
terrifying. They're still terrifying. No, sorry. The regenerators are fine, Adam. You can go back and play the game. They're grand.
Oh yeah. They made them way less scary in the remake.
Yeah, they're less scary now.
Yeah. There's a lot of fucking. Well, for me, right? Like, I think Ori 4 is an amazing. It's a great like. It's kind of like someone saying, "Oh, my favorite metal album is Hybrid Theory." You know what I mean? Like someone else can go, "Really? That's your favorite metal album?" And it's like, look, it got me into it. Okay, I get that it's not the most extreme thing ever, but it's an important one because it got me into it in the first place. It's a gateway horror game, basically, in a way, is Ori 4. But it's like a perfect blend of like really fun gameplay, because the gameplay loop is so fun. Like the actual action in it is amazing, as well as, and the story is really cool. But like the setting is really scary. The characters are scary. There's plenty of enemies in it that are scary. And even when you start getting used to, you're like, okay, I'm now used to these guys. These guys don't scare me anymore. Then they go, okay, it's time to introduce a new enemy. and the new enemy will scare you for a while, and then eventually you'll get used to that. And you're like, yeah, whatever, I can take them on, bring it on, and then they introduce a new one, and you go, ah, fuck, I don't want to fight them, you know. And the cultists, I think, are particularly scary in the remake. I think they made them scarier in the remake. So there's a few others, like, oh man, the fucking alien predator dude thing guy who chased you down in the sewers and stuff. He's all like, even
Didn't stand a chance. Fucking him up.
Yeah, if you wrecked him, he scared the fuck out of me. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm just running and shitting it. That's all I'm doing. But yeah, I think that was my favorite game last year. Was RE4 Remake. Of all the amazing games I played,
There was a lot of games. Yeah,
that was my game of the year. It was fucking incredible. They captured all the iconic moments that I really wanted to see. Most specifically, that dog. Yeah, incredible game. And chainsaws scare the hell out of me.
Chainsaws are scary.
Chainsaws are scary. Yeah.
Next game on my list is Alan Wake 2.
Yeah.
Because even when you go to replay through that, right? Because in most other horror games, you're like, right, new game plus, I got my guns, got my, like, they're fully upgraded. I'm fully upgraded. I'm just going to, like, cleave through this. No bothers. No. Alan Wake 2 is still fucking scary when you do new game plus. You're still on edge, especially when you're going through the Alan sections of the game. Because when you got those shadowy people just whispering Wake at you, I just put you on edge because you don't know which one is an enemy and which one isn't. But that, fuck me, that game. Wow, mind blowing.
Yeah, it's you have 3 games from last year on your list so far, which just highlights how much of a fucking power year for horror games last year was.
Yes,
We
the
were
fact
saying
that they did not have a horror category.
There should have been a
was
horror
like,
category in the Game Awards.
For sure,
We were
yeah.
like, it was the year to do it. But Alan Wake 2, I think I'm him and Han. It's so I have, as I said at the start, I have 2 lists, and it was depending on whether I was classing The Last of Us as a horror game or not. If The Last of Us is definitively not a horror game, then Alan Wake 2 is on my list. And if
Alan
The
Wake
Last
2 is
of Us
definitely
is
more...
a horror game, I know it's more of a horror game. I'm not measuring them that way. I'm saying if they're within the horror genre, which game do I prefer? If The Last of Us is a horror game, and it is also one of my favorite games of all time, it has to go into my top 5 horror games. For me personally, the way I'm measuring it is more out of the games that are horror games, which games are my favorite? As in, I actually like playing them. I would play them again. I really enjoy the games as full, as opposed to which ones scare me.
The Last of Us is
You know what I
one
mean?
of my favorite games of all time, but it's not in my horror list.
So what? That's what I'm trying to like.
I think for
Like
me,
maybe people would definitely be like, it is not a horror game. It's just it's a survival game, but it's with horror elements, but it's not a straight up horror game.
yeah, I suppose it just doesn't really matter, does it? It's just like whatever that means to you. For me, it was a gaming experience where I'm going in with the sole intention of getting a horror experience. Whereas that's some which is kind of why I was a little bit surprised by the Resident Evil 4 thing. It's an amazing game. You know what I mean? It's like, it's an amazing game.
Well, then go clear it there, Adam. Go on,
I
can clear it.
I would. That's not the reason I didn't clear it.
For me, there's no doubt in my mind that RE4 is a horror game. I don't doubt that one at all.
But I think I can. Like,
I am him and Han on The Last of Us. You know what I mean? I could see an argument for it being a horror game. And then I can but also when someone says name some horror games, I don't think I think of The Last of Us.
Well, then that tells you, doesn't it?
I think that's
okay.
The same.
Then
like
in that case, you know, taking note that it is one of the greatest games ever made with horror elements, put it to one side. Alan Wake 2, then, Eric, is also on my list.
That is the correct choice.
All right, okay. It is I remember when I started playing the game, and I was like, the first Alan Wake was a bit creepy, but it wasn't that scary. And like within 2 seconds, I was fucking terrified. The opening of the game is so fucking scary. It's like I don't want to play this game. It's so fucking scary. And then after a while, you start getting used to the jump scary stuff. But sometimes they catch you off guard with it as well. You go, yeah, fuckers, stop doing that. Um, and then yes, the whole wake stuff, the things whispering wake as you're just walking around,
Hmm.
really creepy, really eerie. There's some incredibly creepy imagery. I think the hotel sequence in Alan Wake's part of the story
Right.
is a sequence that really stands out.
Yes.
Um, but the game is like an incredible, where it's like it's a game of two halves. You know, Saga's half is a Resident Evil game,
Yeah, yeah.
and Alan's half is a Silent Hill game.
Yeah.
So when people are saying like, "Oh well, the two like grandfathers of survival horror, are Resident Evil and Silent Hill," and then here comes a modern game that's like, "Here's a bit of both,"
Hmm.
um, but does it in such a way where they don't feel jarring. It finds a way to marry them in also this weird, wacky, crazy story where there's some elements of it you're like, "This is hilarious," and then there's other parts of it where you're just like, "I am shit scared, and I don't want to
Cracking
keep
you.
playing."
Yeah, yeah. Then by the end of it, you're just like, I don't know what the hell any of that was about, but I am intrigued to see the next one.
Yeah, the ending's cool.
Uh,
And there's some DLC coming out this month, I believe. The
yes.
Lake House.
Can't
Eric,
wait.
why did this make your top five in particular?
Well, because I'm getting more and more intrigued into this universe that Remedy is creating. So that's one thing, and I think the story is really good and engaging. Graphically, it's very good. And then it's got that weird psychological horror that like even Dead Space has. As you said, Chris, like with Dead Space, is that the ship? Is that something in the ship? Is that just Isaac losing his mind? We don't know. So it's like that element as well of just going around in loops, and as well as there's so many things to like find and all that stuff. I just think there's good replayability, and I think it's a good, interesting story, and the way that they tell it is very like there's so much about it I could go on.
Yeah, it's quite unique.
Lighting is great in the game.
The lighting is very good. It's very like an A24 movie
Hmm.
rather than anything else. Um, I remember when me and Eric did a spoiler cast episode for Alan Wake 2 because it's a really interesting one to talk about. If you've played it, there's a lot to talk about. But I remember when it end like I was saying, I really hope like I am interested in Remedy as a studio, but I want Alan Wake 3 rather than Control 2 or anything else that they intend to do. And I'm sure they probably will do Control 2 next
Hmm.
because I know there's a lot of love for that game. But I really want Alan Wake 3 because I was just hooked and I really want the next part of Alan Wake's story rather than um kind of having to wait maybe another 10 years before they come back to this character again. And then I'm not even sure if if they actually would do another horror game. Like they could flip the genre altogether. I don't know what they would do, but I think horror suits them. I think they've really found. I know they've been experimenting for a long time and they've made really interesting games, but maybe people would disagree. Maybe people think Control is the better game. I think Alan Wake 2 is the best game they've made.
Well, you said now there is the first DLC they did for Alan Wake 2. In one of them you play as the actor Sean Ashmore.
Oh yes, yeah,
That's the last one, and that actually has ties. That actually ties in with the end of New Game Plus for Alan Wake 2.
right.
But as you go through that, that actually has different like. It gets to a point when you end up having like different like gameplay moments, like as in the gameplay genuinely changes and the way it's formatted changes. And it's really fucking really cool that it's like I kind of want them to mess around with that because that could be really interesting.
Mm.
It's not like they don't like mess around with it every time you're going to the next section with the character, but like they do it like twice or three times. That's just really interesting. because they're very experimental, which makes it also just very interesting to play.
Yeah,
Their games.
yeah. And the musical section is sick.
The musical section is the best thing ever.
So I think that's 4 of your games, Eric, right?
That is
Dead
4 of my games.
Space, Ori 2 Remake, Ori 4 Remake, and Alan Wake 2. So
Number
what takes spot number 5?
Cosmo Canyon in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Scared the fuck out of you. You were like, what happened to his voice?
Yeah.
What?
Nah, joking. But yeah, what happened to his voice? I was just thinking about that the other day, and I was like, what do they do to that location? How they massacred my boy. I am him and Han, like you were, Chris, with 3 horror games. But actually, one of them was Alien Isolation, but I was like, probably not. I don't think I played enough of the game to really count it. But I was even thinking about like Doki Doki Literature Club.
Wow. Did that make your list?
I don't know because so much of it is not a horror game, and then when the
Sure.
horror section starts,
Yeah.
it doesn't last long. But it's
I
just
know what you
when
mean.
that initial moment happens when the game flips and changes. I won't spoil it in case no one's played it, and maybe they're like, "Ooh, this is a horror game. Maybe I'll try it." Just bear with cringiness for an hour
Eey.
That's
before it
not
gets
Adam's advice.
No.
Adam's advice is Wikipedia or something.
Yeah, just ask ChatGPT. It'll probably give you a very similar experience, to be honest.
Just
But-
chat GPT.
but like that initial like change, that initial
Sure.
moment, my heart was racing. I barely could fucking sleep. I was thinking about it for the whole day and work the next day. It really fucking bothered the shit out of me. I was
Right.
fucking shit. Like that's really psychologically fucked at me. That one initial moment.
It goes to show that I think different experiences will resonate with different people differently. And where it didn't grip Adam at all, really. It
Like, sit on the couch. Come on, do something.
Yeah. It obviously affected you, Eric, in the way that the creator intended.
Yes.
In that the game comes with warnings to people.
Yeah.
You know?
Now after that, it kind of goes, oh, okay, but it's just that initial
Right.
moment, like it's wow, it's creepy as fuck. But then the other one that I'm like, maybe that though is the Evil Within 2.
Oh, which one are you picking?
I nearly
You gotta
had
pick
that
one.
on my list.
Wow,
Evil
holy
Within
shit.
2.
No,
You've
sorry,
played it?
1. Evil Within
1.
1.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
nearly
a
had-
scary game.
I nearly had the first one on the list. I just because I was actually finding it difficult to select the 5th one actually. But I put Resi 2 in there instead just because of
That's fair.
its initial my initial experience with it. But yes, I would have put Evil Within 1 just because of Spider Lady.
Spider Lady's pretty scary.
She's the worst thing. Like I think if we were doing like top 5 scary monsters in video games, she would have to be in there. I would give them that. They have some very creepy designs. I always found the one problem I have with the Evil Within is that their general enemy designs, as in, are terrible. Like I don't think there's no need for them. I actually don't like the moment to moment gameplay in the Evil Within.
Yeah, it's a
So,
bit like Wish Resi
For me,
4.
it's
Yeah.
yes. So for me, like that stuff is disappointing, but their bosses are so cool.
Yeah.
And the general ideas are amazing.
Hmm.
But Eric, you were thinking Evil Within 2.
I was thinking Evil Within 2 because I think they do the story better. I think they do the characters better in it. But it's a tough one because actually Resident Evil, looks like Evil Within 1 does have some really cool designs, and then the fact that they
They have Ruvik, Eric.
they also have Ruvik.
They have Ruvik, one of your favorite
He's so
video
fucking
game
cool.
villains of all time.
He's so cool. But the fact, the model viewer, they have the explanation to the designs of the creatures, which stems to Ruvik's perception of certain things.
Mhm.
So, later on in it, you fight these monsters that are they have 2 heads, and that's his perception of people with schizophrenia or split personality. That's how he views them. And I was like, that shit's pretty cool. But Evil in 2, it's just it's better graphics, better gameplay. I think that also has really cool monsters in it, but it tells the story better. And it has the ghost lady. in it, which is reoccurring, and she's fucking terrifying out of it. But also, by the end of the game, you get to fight Chainsaw Guy, Safe Head Man, and Spider Lady. So it actually includes those 3 iconic bosses from the Evil Within 1 in the Evil Within 2. And like the reason to why you're fighting them is very cool, and it's like almost therapeutic for the main character, as you do get like side missions in it to essentially help cure Sebastian's kind of trauma of the first game. So I think like that's really cool. But then the fucking first one is kind of like, as a horror game, is better.
How badly do you want Evil Within 3?
I'd buy an Xbox for it.
Would you? If they announced it and it's an Xbox exclusive,
I'd have to get it. I'd have to get it more than the Elder Scrolls 6. I'd have to get it. Like,
wow, holy shit! Oh man, you have to put one of the Evil Withins in your list then. If it's like that series would make you buy an Xbox. I don't think Doki Doki Literature Club, if it was exclusive to Xbox, would make you buy a fucking Xbox. I just put it out.
You don't know that's Doki 2 like.
I think it was a really interesting game. I think that the creator, I would be interested to see what he might do in the future if he ever makes more games, because I think his mind is interesting. But I think it's very clear that Evil Within is the more loved game here.
I will put Evil Within 2.
Nice. That's a more personal preference. I like that.
Yeah.
So that makes your list. Recap your list.
So it is Resi 2 Remake, Dead Space Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Alan Wake 2 Remake, and Evil Within 2 Remake.
Yes, of course. All remakes. Adam, what was your list again?
Outlast, Alien Isolation, Dead Space, Resident Evil 7, and Resident Evil 2 Original.
Yes.
Dead Space Original.
I think we can say all the games we have mentioned are all amazing games. And again, we were never ever making, this is like the top 5 horror games ever made. It was a personal thing. And we want to hear everyone else's lists. My list is incredibly similar to Eric's. A lot of them being ones that came out last year, because I thought it was just such a solid year for horror games. But also, I do think, like, I know, like, people might be like, why are you putting the remakes on and not the originals? And if the remake is so faithful to the original, but it's just using modern technology to actually make a game scarier due to lighting or audio design, then that is worth noting, I think. So I also had Ori 4 Remake on there. I had the Dead Space Remake, but again, I could, like, take the original either. And I did have Alan Wake 2 then on the list. It bumped out The Last of Us, because we have now clarified maybe The Last of Us is not specifically a horror game. The other 2 on my personal list are Resident Evil Village. I fucking love this game.
Great game.
Similarly to Ori 4, it's one where it's like I have fun playing it, but I also dread certain parts of it, and there's certain elements that are really scary. I think the opening is really scary. I love the gothic atmosphere of the place, the game. It's like playing a Universal Monsters game. Like, it's so fucking cool. Like, it's like Dracula's castle and stuff. And I don't care what anyone says. I would agree with Adam that I think overall Resident Evil 7 is the scariest Resident Evil game. But to this day, I think the Dollhouse is the scariest sequence they have ever made. I think it is fucking...
Barely
unless you're Adam and then he laughs at us.
And I don't mean just when the creature arrives. I mean everything about that fucking house. Everything. I mean all the, like, when you're trapped down there and you have no weapons, suddenly that's all taken off you and you have to do the puzzle and it's just creepy sounds and it's dark and you have to go down a well and you're thinking of the ring and you're going, fuck this, I know this is going to go bad, I don't like it. It just gets scarier and scarier. And the house is covered in fog, so you first get there, you're like, well, this is Silent fucking Hill. Like,
And then, of course, to really add to it, when you do the DLC of The Shadow of Rose and you go to the dollhouse, it gets worse.
You're like, I don't want to go back there. Wait, what are they going to do different? And then you go in and you go, oh no, it's worse.
So much worse.
The fucking mannequins are terrifying. They do the whole Doctor Who thing. Every time if you look away, they chase you. And then you're like, it's fine because you have one. You're like, okay, I can control it.
That's in another game, though, isn't it?
It must be, right?
Oh, sure.
I'm trying to think what the game is. Yeah. Anyway, I think there's like kind of like an indie game or something that's kind of very similar to that. Like it is the kind of the Angels thing.
Yeah. And it's like, it's fine when there's one, because you're like, Well, if I just
You
keep
can
an
keep an
eye on
eye
it
on
and walk
it.
backwards,
Yeah.
that's fine. And then you get to a certain corner and a second one comes in, and they're coming from different directions, and you're going, well, fuck. What do I do now? Yeah, that was really scary. That was a good DLC, actually.
I think
It
it
was a
is.
weird DLC, but it was good. But yeah, Resident Evil Village, I fucking love that game.
Also hilarious how they do everything in their power to not show, like, because I think with
Ethan's
that,
face.
yeah, with
Yeah.
that there was the third person mode, wasn't there, for the original game?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and anytime you turn
Yeah.
the camera, they
He
make
turns
a
his
big,
face.
they make sure.
Yeah, 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 so you can never see it.
So that's like, it's so, I love that because like they easily could just animate it, but they're like leaning into the gag at that point,
Yeah.
you know. So my I suppose the metrics for my list was not necessarily the games that scare me the most, even though I do think those games are also amazing horror games. It was of the horror genre, which games do I like the most? So that was my metrics. The last game that's making my list, right? And people are going to be like, "That's not a game. It doesn't count."
I'm going to say that.
PT.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying it does count is because we had an episode
Mm-hmm.
a few years back,
Yep.
right? And it was top 5 PS4 games.
Mhm.
And Adam argued for PT to be included in that list. And we listened to him, and I agreed with him, and he won. And PT was crowned one of the top 5 PS4 games. Therefore, if we're going by that metric, it is a horror game, and it is one of the best horror games ever made.
But it's
because
not of the
it-
criteria we established before we
And what was the criteria we established?
that you have to be able to
What-
play it.
You have to be able to play it.
Yeah.
If I so
We can't play
if
it
I
right now.
If I found someone's PS4 that had it, I could.
I guess you could.
Like it's a game that existed that was
Yeah,
played.
no, you know what? Yeah, I like.
No,
in
I
fairness,
took Pete. I am including it. I don't. Give a shit.
no, I will. I'm agreeing with you, Chris. As in,
Yeah, yeah.
you should be allowed to keep it on the list because
Yeah.
it definitely deserves a shout out for sure. And if you want that, put it on your list. Then fair
see you
enough,
do it.
because that is
I'm put on the list. Every single horror game that has come out in the last 10 years or whatever, whenever PT came out, is because of PT. Basically,
I
it
remember
inspired the next wave of horror games.
because there were so many games that came out then. Like Visage, I think was like a PC game that was like, what is this PT inspired? Like there were so many games
Oh,
that
yeah,
did come out,
so many.
inspired so many. So yeah, no, I mean if you wanna include that, that's fine. You're wrong, but yeah, it's fine. No, I'm joking.
It's one of those horror games that I enjoy because it was
There was a community to it. Like there was
no, but
like,
it was what I'm trying to say is it was easy to play.
right.
The hard part of playing it was actually getting over the fear of playing it.
Mhm.
That was the hard part. It wasn't like Outlast where it's like this is actually hard. Like this is actually difficult to play, which is also still an amazing game. But and if it was really like no, you can't have PT, then I'd be like okay, fine, Layers of Fear, because that's the next like full length game I can think of that does kind of what PT does. But
Yeah.
every time I think of Layers of Fear, I'm like the only reason I'm picking that is because it's the closest thing I can get to PT that I can't play.
And
So really, it's PT I want to play.
both of them, it's a weird thing that like, and I think it's something that I kind of latch to when I think of horror games, is that yes, it's the whole thing of, your willingness to move forward,
Yes.
mixed with puzzles to solve.
Yes.
And both of those experiences are basically that. All you have to do is just look at the thing and then like maybe do an input or something like that. It's very easy to actually control. You're not having to shoot
Yes.
anything or necessarily. And I think that is kind of a key component. Is like, is there an it's basically Pac-Man, but you know, you're absolutely enhancing all of the fucking features. It's a puzzle. You're trying to run away from a thing that's trying to chase you. And that's
Can you
it.
Imagine a horror Pac-Man.
Yeah, I've played many of them.
We just did, yeah. The PT and Layers of
Ghosts
Fear.
chasing us
No,
and
no, no.
shit.
But I mean, okay, never mind. But
I know
yes.
what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But I think as well those kinds of games, because the gameplay is minimalist, it's basically just walking, and then usually there's a button to interact with something. The UIs are always fucking amazing. Like there's never anything on the screen except just what's in front of you. And they always just put so much attention to detail into the environments because they know that it's like, well, this isn't a game with big skill trees and hours of gameplay. Like if this game has to be nearly flawless for it to be the experience we want it to be and to be a lasting experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then also all the puzzle solving and the willingness to get over it means most of the game is in your head. You know what I mean? Most of the actual playing of the game is in your head. It's like, do I even want to play this game? Like trying to overcome the fear of what's in your own head.
PT had
And that's a
some of
different
the-
kind of game that it's playing with you,
Yeah,
man.
PT had some of the fucking most challenging puzzles too. Like to this day, I don't know how I cleared it. I cleared it 3 times, and I don't know how I did it.
I never cleared it. I never cleared it once.
It was an incredible game in and of itself. Like it's a playable teaser, right? But the twist was incredible. Like the twist of what it actually was so good, and it's like, oh man, I wish we got that full game that was going to come as a result of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an incredible experience. It's such a wild when it first everyone talking about it. Like, what the fuck is this? And like that's such a gaming memory. You know, that it's like it's a shame some people. It's a shame not everyone had it, you know, in a way. Yeah, and some people can't. But I even think even if you could experience it, it's not the same thing because everyone knows what it was.
As a trailer, sure, but
and that it didn't come.
As I said, how do
the
you clear
gameplay
it? Right?
Yeah,
I think
know,
to this day, if it was still released, that would be the thing that people would be trying to figure out. Is like, because people had so many different theories as to how you actually complete the thing. And they were all really inconsistent. Like, it was mostly the last puzzle. It's like, how the fuck do we do this? And no one seems to know how to do it.
So I remember I was playing it with someone. We got to the end. The person looked it up and it talked about you have to make like 10 steps and then turn and then make another couple of steps and then turn right. And it was just like never working.
And some people said you had to like speak into the microphone. Like say something particular into the microphone. It's like, come on now.
I wonder if there was an element of I have no idea now, but I wonder was there an element of random generation where there was actually a few ways to do it and it randomly generated which one would work so that it would create the myth of people going, how the fuck do you finish this? Well, the way I did it was this and the way I did it was that, and have that like weird discourse going on. It wouldn't be unlike something he would do, and he would probably never reveal how it's actually done.
Maybe. If not, though, it did become his, I guess, last, unless he does something similar. But it was like the equivalent of taking the Psycho Mantis fight and turning that kind of thing into a full game.
Yeah.
That whole, like, how do I beat this thing? I need to think beyond the confines of the game a little bit to beat this.
And ultimately, a very short game, but so impactful.
But it can go on.
It can
go on. It can just loop and loop and loop forever.
Like Doki Doki Literature Club. It can go on forever. Unless you end it.
So yeah, it's making my list. So that's my top 5. Before we finish up, any other last honorable mentions people want to shout out of games they considered when making the list, and before they were like, well, these are the 5 that I'm going to put at the top?
Resident Evil 8 was close for me, for sure, and Resident Evil 7. Absolutely, those two would be close. Cause...
I mean, the Resident Evil series is just...
Especially where they're going with it now. I think they've really...
Yeah, the newer ones.
Yeah, they've really went, people don't like this co-op stuff and this action stuff. Maybe we should make some horror games. So Resident Evil 7, wow, what a way to kind of restart the franchise almost.
Also thanks to PT.
Also thanks, yeah. So, I mean, those two would be honorable mentions for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Layers of Fear nearly made it for me.
Yeah, Layers of Fear is a great game in a similar way where it's just, you just have to, can you keep playing? And it is really creepy and unsettling. And
yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one though, I'd say. I didn't have like that whole, to me that was like the dollhouse in Resident Evil 8 but made into a full game.
Sure.
It had that and some of the puzzles in it I absolutely loved. Like one of them in particular, which was like you're kind of like running around a corner basically for fucking ever, and you're like, what the hell? Like, I'm pretty sure I went around here, but then when you turn around, it's like
Yeah.
the whole room shifts, and you're like, oh,
I love shit like
you
that.
have to go. Yeah, so it's all
That shit is great.
So Laser Fear would be like if you took Scarecrow's moments from
Yep.
Batman and smashed it with fucking a little bit of sprinkle of PT and a bit of the dollhouse from Resident Evil 8. I think you got Layers of Fear. If you love all those little elements, I think you'd love the game. And also low frame rates. If you love low frame rates, you love this game.
I think it's really interesting that moments in games that are not necessarily of the genre can actually influence the genre. And I actually do, when you mentioned the Scarecrow stuff, I think Rocksteady, in moments of their games, helped influence horror games.
Yeah, sure.
Like in a big way. But yeah, a lot of those games would have been honorable mentions for me. Outlast would be an honorable mention. It is a very, very scary game, and like what an experience to play through. It's definitely a one and done though. I'd never play it again. That's why it couldn't be my top. I was kind of thinking like if I could play any of these again, I would. Until Dawn gets an honorable mention. It's not particularly scary, but it's just a really fun take on the slasher horror genre. And I think they take what would be a boring, predictable premise, and they have a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just becomes a real fun, like it is definitely a fun one to play a Halloween night. Like it was like, oh, what game will I play a Halloween? Until Dawn is a really good one to kind of jump back into. I hear the remake is not doing well at all.
I've seen
but it was always puzzling as to why they even did it.
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. I saw one clip of a kind of like a comparison sequence, and it didn't. It certainly looked enhanced. Like it's like, oh yeah, this version obviously has better graphics, but actually to its detriment, I think it ended up being a worse looking experience. Almost as if the more you added, and it kind of took away from what it was a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like a Blu-ray version of an old movie where you start seeing things you weren't supposed to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when Jack Nicholson first walks into the office in Tim Burton's Batman.
Yeah, honestly, Tim Burton's Batman is so much better on VHS. It really is. But all the reviews I've seen of Until Dawn remake so far say that the original is better. So
nice.
We've played the best version, folks. But yeah, it's a good one. I don't think I have any other honorable mentions. But I suppose, like I said at the very start, we have not played every horror game ever. And if you are wondering why was there no Silent Hill games on your list, it's because we have not played the Silent Hill franchise. PT being the closest thing. We did say there were some Silent Hill isms in Alan Wake 2. Definitely an inspiration on it. I did play Silent Hill: The Short Message at the start of the year. That free game thing that came out that was clearly like also inspired by PT. And it was good and disturbing, but certainly not like one of the best horror games I've ever played or anything like that. But it was an interesting experience. But yeah, I am curious about this Silent Hill 2 remake. It might be one I would pick up in the future when it's a bit cheaper. But I am actually nervous of it. I don't know if I would play it all. I actually think I think I would find this shit scary, actually.
I'll play it and let you know.
But I'm really happy to hear people's reviews of it.
What's the one game you just absolutely would not play because you know it's just going to be too scary?
Well, I think the Outlast games, I don't really think I'd play any of them. Or things like Visage or something. Those things where it's like, yeah, I think I need to play a game where there's an element of defense. Or it's like, I'm not going to get harmed, like PT. Because I think otherwise, for me, it's just like, I get a little bit of a disconnect. I'm sorry, this is probably supposed to be a quick question. But the Outlast games, because I just get that disconnect of why, though, are you not picking up a weapon?
I don't think I would ever play through all of Alien Isolation.
All right.
And I think it's an incredible game that is too long, and I just don't think I can keep up that stamina, that mental stamina of, like, I feel like the whole stalker enemy thing is something that I dread in games. and d- there's only so long I can put up with that. You know what I mean? Like when I play like a game like Village, and Lady Dimitrescu is a stalker enemy, and mind you,
Yeah, yeah.
not the scariest stalker enemy ever. But you know that when you get past the castle, you're not doing that for the rest of the game. Like that's done.
Yeah.
So it's a,
Unfortunately,
it's
she doesn't follow you around.
unfortunately. So it's not a thing that you have to like if you have to get the mental stamina to like, all right, I need to like just get through these halls and get past her, and you know, it's not something you have to put up with for hours on end.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so long I can do that. Same with Ori 2 and Mr. X. There is moments where he's not around and he won't be around. Like long chunks where you're like, okay, he's done now for a while. So that's good. And I get to do some other stuff. Because he's also exhausting to me. Whereas the Xenomorph for I don't know how long is Alien Isolation in full?
I think some people are saying it was like 24 hours or something.
can't
It's
be
not
that
that long.
Alright.
I think you could probably clear it in.
Like 10 hours?
It's
Or
a
is
bit
it
more
longer
than
than
that.
that?
I'd say that you could probably get it in 12.
Yeah, so for me personally, even though it's like I think it's an incredibly well made game and I appreciate what they did, that's too long to be worrying about a stalker. That's just far too long. That scares the fuck out of me.
Yeah, I don't think that would actually feel that long if it was a little bit more varied. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because that's like
Yeah.
that's the length of like Last of Us 1, which doesn't feel that long, but there's enough to kind of it gives you breaks. Alien Isolation doesn't give you a break.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's no
And
cutscenes
then
really. Like there's a few, but you know, there's not many.
And then I don't think I could. I think I would struggle with some of the Silent Hill games, especially the originals. Actually, this new one might have some refinements that make it easier to play. The jankiness and it's fucking scary would really fuck me up.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I was having actually a tough time with because they kind of remade the original Resident Evil game.
They did remake.
I was having a tough time with that because it was.
What do you mean they
Nah.
kind of remade it? They did remake. That's a remake.
That's a remake. If you've ever played the
Considered by
original,
many to be
that's
the
a
best remake
that's
ever.
a remake.
No, I did. Yeah, I do, but it's just not the remake of 2 and 3 and 4, like, you know, because it still
No, I
has the
know.
fixed camera angle. So yeah, I think old Resident Evil and old Silent Hill, I probably would have an issue based on some of the jankiness of it.
I will say that Resident Evil Remake is as much a remake of Resident Evil as Dead Space Remake is a remake of Dead Space.
More so.
Not more so, as much as I would say. There's a few additions and it looks better. Ultimately, it's the same experience. You know what I mean? No, but like the Resident Evil 1 Remake was about trying to preserve what the original thing was, but just
Really?
make it look better. And it is a fucking... Actually, that's one I don't think I could play because the spiders
Yeah.
are like they just fucking rotoscope them in. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're
It's like
terrifying.
they just videoed it.
Yeah. What's one for you, Adam?
Amnesia, The Dark Descent. I think his name
sure,
is
yeah.
that? Yeah, Amnesia.
Yeah.
Amnesia and Soma, I think, are ones that I don't think I would have a great time with.
Yeah.
Those two are supposed to be like the scariest game of all time. So I think like yeah, there we go.
You don't
you're fine.
You don't want to test that theory.
Yeah,
What
I'm
about
good.
like
I considering
don't think it's-
Outlast as like that's like my limit.
Yeah. Would you try Still Wakes the Deep that came out this year?
Oh, I heard that's supposed to be pretty scary actually.
I
probably
yeah,
would
so
give it a
that-
go if I was arsed actually. Yeah.
I played the first little bit of it, but before shit hit the fan, I haven't got far into it. I don't know.
I got as far as the first encounter.
Okay.
It killed me. It's a fucking great design. It's messed up.
Okay. Cool.
But again, it's that Outlast thing where it's
Yeah, I
like,
did
but
hear it was-
why?
I did hear it was good. I assume it's a little bit like Soma then.
I don't really know what song.
Oh, I don't. I say I don't know what a Summer Amnesia
wanted
is.
to
You
So
should give
defend
Soma a
it.
go, I think, Eric. You'd love that.
No,
You should
you're
give that a
okay.
go.
You wanted to be able to defend yourself, Eric, did you? Is that what bothers you about Still Wakes
Well,
the
I'm
Deep?
gonna say like yes, like I'm a bit like why would like the fair enough the first time you meet the creature you might not, but I think from then on you might be okay. This thing is weird. I need to find a hammer or a wrench or something. You know what I
Sure.
mean? Like when you take BioShock, that's a pretty it's a pretty intense, scary game.
Mhm.
But of course,
Yeah.
the person picks up a wrench. The main character goes, right, well, I'm going to pick up a wrench because, well, first of
Mhm.
all, I've been kindly told to pick up a wrench. And then the second thing is I'm going to be dealing with some crazy folks. So I got to defend myself.
Well, I would like to ask the audience to kindly let us know what their favorite horror games are of all time. Have you played any of the ones we've just mentioned? Actually, like, have you played Still Wakes the Deep this year? Was it a good horror game? Would you recommend it? Have you been playing the Silent Hill 2 remake? Have you played Soma and fucking what was the other one?
Amnesia.
Amnesia.
The Dark Descent. Have you jumped into those games? These super, super famously scary games. What would make your top 5 horror games of all time? Remember, this is not necessarily about doing these are the best critically speaking. This is about for you personally, what are your top 5, just as we've shared our personal top 5. If you enjoyed this episode and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you jump down to the comments and share your thoughts, share your own picks if you enjoyed it. Give us a thumbs up, hit subscribe, ring the notification bell for all future content. And to those who listen to us on the audio platforms, you can touch base on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and X at The Brothers Take. Again, to give your take on your own top 5 horror games of all time. What are you going to be playing this Halloween? Let us know. Thank you very much for checking out this week's episode. We will be back to talk to you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.